right now, I mean, literally today, we are saving more data in a single day than humanity saved in its first 3,000 years combined.
Yeah, it's a staggering amount of information.
It really is. So why are some historians actually terrified that the 21st century is going to be a digital dark age?
Well, that's the paradox,
But
right?
exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. You know, when you picture the future discovering our era, you probably imagine them finding these massive humming server farms out in the desert somewhere.
Right, perfectly preserving everything we've ever done.
Yeah, every single email, every 4K photograph, every line of software code, just endless institutional records.
Mm.
We have this kind of quiet assumption that because we are hoarding all this data in flawless high definition, we're somehow guaranteeing that the future will understand us.
But there is a very comforting illusion there. It's this idea that preservation automatically equals transmission. We treat these servers like they're, I don't know, ultimate impenetrable time capsules.
Exactly. But here is the paradox we're unpacking for you today. An exponential increase in preserved information does not necessarily produce an increase in understanding.
No, it definitely doesn't.
So for you listening right now, we have to ask a slightly uncomfortable question. Is your data, your work documents, your journals, your code, is it just remaining in a storage drive, or is it actually reaching the future?
Because those two things are profoundly different. I mean, they are completely different mechanisms.
Yeah.
And that structural difference is really the mission of our discussion today. The sources we are looking at suggest we need to completely reframe how we view records.
How so?
Right now, we treat a record as a container, like a vault meant to just lock away fixed information from the past. But to actually transmit understanding, we have to start viewing records as contact surfaces.
Contact surfaces.
Yeah, think of them as interfaces.
Yeah.
Interfaces through which someone in the future can observe the world all over again.
Okay, let me push back on that right out of the gate, because I want to make sure we really ground this for everyone. If I save a document to the cloud, or if I back up a photograph, the pixels are there. The text is flawlessly rendered.
Right, the physical data is there.
Yeah, so why isn't that enough? If the physical or digital record perfectly survives, shouldn't the future be able to understand it just fine?
It's a really logical assumption, but it ignores what disappears even when the record survives intact. What is fascinating in the research is this central structural observation.
Which is?
The conditions of observation often disappear long before the information itself does.
The conditions of observation, meaning like the environment in which the data was actually created.
Yes, the context, the why. When a visible record survives, say a written corporate decision or a finalized architectural blueprint, what you are seeing is just the final output.
Just the result.
Exactly. What you lose are the invisible forces that shaped it. Like, why was this specific record created in the first place? What were the people in the room afraid of at the time?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. Where did they hesitate? What were the options they intensely debated and then ultimately just rejected?
I see. That completely shifts how I view my own meeting notes, honestly.
Oh, totally.
I look at like software specifications or project notes from 3 years ago, and they perfectly preserve what we built, but they completely fail to preserve why we chose that specific design over another one.
Yeah, they strip all the humanity out of it.
You read the bullet points, and the document just feels dead. You don't feel the tension of the budget cuts. You don't know who was sweating the deadline.
Right, or the panic about a competitor that forced you to cut 3 features.
Exactly. It looks like a deliberate genius strategy on paper, but in reality, it was just sheer desperation.
That is the perfect practical example. The specification is preserved, but the human friction that generated it is completely gone.
Wow.
And without that friction, someone looking at it 50 years from now might draw entirely the wrong conclusions about how we operated.
It's kind of like family photographs. You look at a picture of your grandparents from the 1950s, and the camera captures the smile perfectly.
Right, the image is flawless.
But it doesn't capture the complex reality of that day. It doesn't capture the financial anxiety they might have been feeling, or, the argument they had in the car on the way to the park,
Yeah.
or even the fact that they were looking at someone just outside the frame who was making them laugh. We think we are saving the memory, but we're just saving a flattened surface. The reality is gone.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really critical transition point in the sources. If standard preservation leaves us with this hollowed out data stripped of its why, how do we actually pass knowledge forward?
Yeah, how do we package something so it actually means something to someone later?
Our sources address this by highlighting the structural difference between what they call a fixed record and a living record.
Okay, so if the smile in the photo is just a flat, incomplete truth, how do we create a living one? Walk me through the mechanics of a fixed versus a living record.
Well, a fixed record preserves a past meaning. It is closed off as a completed answer. Now, it's not that a fixed record is factually incorrect.
Right, the facts might be right.
Yeah, but the problem is that because it is a closed, finalized point, it acts as a dead end. It is entirely unable to interact with the reality of another era.
It just sits there.
It just sits there on the server, demanding that the future accept it exactly as it was written, with absolutely no room for dialogue.
So a fixed record is like handing the future a completely solved crossword puzzle. I mean, it might be perfectly accurate, but there's absolutely nothing for them to do with it.
Precisely. A living record, on the other hand, is structured to allow meaning to restart in the future.
To restart.
Yes.
Yeah.
A living record intentionally preserves the context. It preserves the history, the uncertainty, the reasons for change.
Which is all the messy stuff we usually try to delete.
Exactly. Crucially, it keeps the rejected alternatives visible. It leaves the residual questions unresolved so the future can see what we were still wondering about.
There is a term in the research that I really want to unpack here because I think it gets to the heart of this. The text talks about maintaining the recursive spiral.
Yes.
That sounds incredibly academic. Can we translate that for people?
Let's break it down. Think of it like baking. A fixed record is like handing someone a baked loaf of bread. It's finished, they can consume it, but they can't change it.
Right.
The recursive spiral is what happens when you hand someone a sourdough starter instead.
Ah, okay. So you are giving them the active, living ingredient so they can generate their own bread suited to their own environment.
Exactly. Generation, the creation of meaning, it's not a single point in time. It is a continuous trajectory. A living record maintains that trajectory.
Because it keeps the process open.
Right. It leaves the door open so that when a future generation looks at it, the record can actually resonate with their new reality. Inheritance is not the transportation of unchanged meaning. It is the transfer of conditions through which meaning can be generated again.
But wait, if we are handing the future this sourdough starter and actively encouraging them to generate their own meaning from our records, aren't we just greenlighting historical revisionism?
That's a huge question.
Because if a record is alive and can be reinterpreted to fit whatever the future's reality is, aren't we giving them a free pass to twist historical facts for their own political or social convenience?
That is the exact danger, and it is a vital structural concern in the material. But the sources provide a very firm analytical distinction here.
Okay, what's the distinction?
Reinterpretation absolutely does not mean altering the source record. It is not about rewriting the past to fit a current narrative.
Okay, but how do you actually enforce that?
Yeah.
Because reinterpreting sounds suspiciously like rewriting if you don't have guardrails.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could look at a historical document and claim it means something new, who is to say I'm not just lying about the past?
The difference lies entirely in the structure of how we encounter the record. Reinterpretation means encountering the original untouched record again, but observing it from within a completely different historical reality.
Okay, so the record stays the same, but the lens changes.
Yes. And to prevent this from degrading into just altering the past, there are strict structural conditions that must be met.
What are the conditions?
Well, first, you must preserve the original record completely intact. Second, you have to retain the complete revision history. Every change must be visible.
Let me stop you right there. I want to challenge the practicality of that second rule.
Go ahead.
You say we have to retain the complete revision history. Every draft, every abandoned thread, every rejected option. For a single organization over a decade, we are talking about petabytes of data.
Sure.
I mean, version control systems like Git do this for code, absolutely, but for human decisions. Is that actually feasible, or is this just an academic fantasy?
It's a really fair critique, but we have to separate the concept from the literal storage of every single keystroke. The goal isn't necessarily to hoard infinite drafts.
And what is it?
The goal is to structurally track the forks in the road. When a major decision is made, a living record captures not just the path taken, but the rationale for discarding the other path.
Ah, I see.
It's about preserving the map of the territory rather than saving every grain of sand. If you don't map those discarded paths, the future will assume the path you took was the only one that existed.
Which fundamentally limits their ability to learn from our mistakes.
Exactly. And to finish the list of conditions. Third, you must strictly distinguish facts from interpretations. Fourth, you have to keep uncertainty visible. You cannot pretend the original authors were sure when they weren't.
Right.
Fifth, You must identify the position of the interpreter, like who is doing the looking and from where. And finally, you must always preserve a clear path back to the original source.
Okay, and that brings us to a phrase in the research that serves as the ultimate guardrail against rewriting the past.
Yes.
Reinterpretability is fluidity with the possibility of return.
Yes.
Fluidity with the possibility of return. I want to anchor that for you listening.
Yes.
Because it is the core of this entire concept.
Yeah.
You can wander as far as you want into new interpretations. You can see how an old software architecture applies to a new technological paradigm.
Right.
But you always have a structural rope tying you back to the exact physical facts of the original moment.
Yes. It's a dynamic, grounded relationship. Not every interpretation is equally valid. If you break the rope, if you sever the path back to the original contact surface and the original facts, you aren't reinterpreting, you are just rewriting.
So if we follow these rules, how does this relationship actually play out over time? The sources mention a cycle of inheritance.
They do.
Let me see if I can map this out based on what we've established.
Yeah.
Step 1. Someone in the past inherits a question or a problem. Step 2. They wrestle with it, and that struggle becomes a record. Step 3. Time passes, and that record makes contact with the future.
You're exactly on track. Because it's a living record, because it has that revision history and that uncertainty built in, that contact sparks step 4, which is reinterpretation.
Okay.
The future encounters the old struggle, and it forces them to look at their current world differently, which is step 5, renewed observation. And finally, that renewed observation generates step 6, a brand new question.
Inherit a question, create a record, contact the future, reinterpret, observe anew, generate a new question.
Yeah.
It's a breathing system. It doesn't stop.
It is the continuous generation of meaning.
Yeah.
But, and this is where we really need to look at our modern reality, this entire structural cycle is currently under severe threat.
Because if the whole point of a living record is preserving the human struggle, then our current obsession with AI feels like we are driving off a cliff.
Yeah.
We are using AI specifically to eliminate the struggle.
Precisely. We are generating answers and completed records faster than humanity ever thought possible. If you need a corporate policy, a summary of a massive data set, or a complex piece of code, AI gives it to you instantly. It's frictionless.
But looking at the cycle we just mapped out, aren't we entirely losing the question gradient?
How do you mean?
Well, when I ask an AI to write a policy for me, it just spits out the baked bread. It wipes away the hesitation. It hides the alternatives it considered and discarded. It hands me a fixed point, not a trajectory.
That is the exact dilemma. When we use AI as an oracle that provides a frictionless, polished answer, we are mass-producing dead ends.
Wow.
We are flooding the future with fixed records that contain absolutely no why. So the challenge is, how do we utilize this massive technological leap without destroying the living record?
Right. We aren't going to put the AI genie back in the bottle. So how do we restructure the interaction?
The source material introduces a fascinating concept for this, which they call the atmospheric health scan.
Atmospheric health scan. Good. We need to translate that. How does an AI scan the atmosphere of a document? Give me a tangible example of what that looks like in a real user interface.
It requires a fundamental shift in how we position the AI. Instead of using it as an answer machine, we need to treat AI as an observational environment.
Okay.
Let's say you are a manager drafting a highly sensitive restructuring email to your team. In the current model, you say, AI, write a polite layoff email, and it generates a sterile, fixed document.
Right.
No friction. In the atmospheric health scan model, the AI acts as a mirror, not a ghostwriter. You write your draft, and the AI quietly reflects back your cognitive state.
Reflects it back how?
It might highlight a paragraph and say, you are using heavy passive voice here. Are you trying to distance yourself from this decision?
Oh, wow.
Or you mentioned efficiency but omitted the recent budget cuts you discussed yesterday. Is that intentional?
That's incredible. So instead of just handing me the final product, it is forcing me to confront my own unexpressed assumptions. It is highlighting the trajectory of my logic and pointing out my blind spots.
Exactly. And here is the crucial part for our deep dive. The record that gets preserved for the future isn't just the finalized restructuring email.
It's the whole interaction.
Yes. The living record includes that dialogue with the AI. It includes your realization of the blind spot. It captures the alternatives you considered.
That makes perfect sense. The text also used a couple of phrases here that threw me at first. Cognitive homeostasis and transparent pain. How do those tie into this AI mirror?
Let's use a physical metaphor. Think of cognitive homeostasis like a thermostat for your brain. If you go to the gym and someone else lifts the weights for you, your muscles atrophy.
Right.
If AI does all the heavy analytical lifting, our critical thinking muscles atrophy, we lose cognitive homeostasis.
So we want the AI to be our spotter at the gym, not the guy who lifts the weight for us.
That is exactly it. And transparent pain simply refers to keeping the visible friction of human decision-making alive. The hesitation, the doubt, the struggle to articulate something complex, that is the pain.
Oh, I see.
If we scrub all that away to make a perfectly polished document, we destroy the contact surface.
Mhm.
By using AI as an environment that challenges us rather than an oracle that solves for us, we preserve that transparent pain. We keep the gradient intact without forcing a finalized, dead meaning onto the future.
So let's bring all of this together and look at the big picture. We started this deep dive by looking at our massive piles of saved data, those humming server farms in the desert holding petabytes of 4K photos and flawless code.
Yeah.
And we started with this creeping realization that true preservation isn't about hoarding final answers. It isn't about saving a perfectly polished PDF or a flawless photograph where everyone is smiling, but nothing real is being said.
Because saving a fixed answer without the context is just burying a dead conclusion. It might survive structurally, but it fails to transmit anything meaningful.
Right. What we've learned today is that true inheritance is about preserving the friction. It's about leaving the breadcrumbs of our doubts, our unexpressed fears, our rejected alternatives, and our deep context.
Exactly.
Because giving the future a sourdough starter instead of a baked loaf of bread is the only way we allow them to engage with our thoughts on their own terms. It's the only way they can take what we've done and actually use it to observe their own world anew. Reinterpretability is fluidity with the possibility of return.
If there is one structural truth to take away from these sources, it is this. Records are not duplications of the past. They are reconnectable interfaces between the past and the future. They are the surfaces where two different eras make contact.
A reconnectable interface. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder as you go about your day. The next time you write a project brief at work or document a major decision, or even the next time you type a prompt into an AI, ask yourself a question. Are you just burying a dead conclusion for someone to dig up later? Or are you leaving behind a living question that will invite the future to observe the world anew?